The chain is still warm from the child's skin when Kang Min-jun lifts it into the chandelier light. 17 years of silence hang from his fingers. Where? He says, and his voice does not rise because men like him never need to raise their voices. Did she get this? Behind him, two of Seoul's most powerful families stand frozen in his marble foyer. His housekeeper, his fiancée, Seo Yeon, her mouth still open from the accusation she hasn't finished making. And in front of him, a black African maid named Amara Adeyemi, fired 10 minutes ago, suitcase still in her hand, is staring at the small silver dragon dangling from his fist like she's seeing a ghost. Because she is. That's not possible, Amara whispers. No. Min-jun agrees. It isn't. The little girl, 6 years old, oversized yellow sweater, worn shoes, presses herself into Amara's side and says nothing. She hasn't spoken a full sentence to anyone in 6 weeks, but she keeps her eyes on the pendant like it might disappear if she looks away. This pendant vanished from the Kang family vault the night Min-jun's mother died. Officially, she fell. Unofficially, everyone in this house knows better than to say the word murder out loud. Somehow, a nameless child dragged in off the street is wearing the one object that was supposed to have been buried with her. Min-jun closes his hand around it. Nobody leaves this house, he says. Not the maid, not the girl, and not— His eyes cut precisely, deliberately to his fiancée. Whoever put that bracelet in her room. Seo Yeon's face drains of color, but to understand how it reached this point, we need to go back. And trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end, because what this woman does next will leave you speechless. If you're hooked already, hit like and subscribe, because this story only gets more intense from here. 6 weeks earlier. The Kong mansion sits above the Han River like something carved rather than built, all glass and stone and silence, and inside it, Amara Adeyemi has learned exactly how to be invisible. She has worked here for almost 2 years. She irons shirts that cost more than her mother's monthly pension. She polishes floors that reflect chandeliers she is not permitted to look up at directly. She sends $900 home to Lagos every month and keeps 11 for herself, and she has never once let anyone in this house see her cry about it. The other staff flinch when Kang Min-jun walks past. They bow too low, laugh too fast at nothing, go quiet the second his shadow crosses a doorway. Amara doesn't. She keeps her eyes on her work and says, "Good morning, sir," in the same flat, competent tone she'd use with anyone, and something about that, the sheer refusal of fear, has made him notice her more than he'd like to admit. He tells himself it means nothing. Then one gray Tuesday, she finds Naya. The girl is curled behind a dumpster outside the community center 3 blocks from the staff dormitory, soaked from an overnight rain, silent in the specific way of a child who has learned that noise brings danger. Amara almost walks past. Almost. Then the girl's eyes lift, and Amara, who has spent her whole life being the one nobody stops for, stops. "Hey," she says, crouching to the girl's height. "Hey, little one, are you lost?" The girl says nothing, but she doesn't run. Amara should call the police. She should call social services, hand the child over, walk away clean. Instead, she wraps the girl in her own coat and carries her back to the small room she rents above a noodle shop, because some decisions aren't made with the head. It takes 4 days before the girl says a single word. When she finally does, it isn't hungry or cold or home, it's, "Mommy said the dragon would protect me." Amara has no idea what that means. She assumes it's a bedtime story, a comfort phrase. She doesn't yet know the girl is wearing the answer around her own neck, tucked under a sweater 2 sizes too big, and that she will spend the next 6 weeks quietly trying to find the child's family, while telling herself every single day, "Tomorrow I'll call social services." Tomorrow never comes, because by then she loves her. Min-jun's morning is not supposed to include a crisis, but crises don't check calendars. His logistics director calls at 6 a.m., panicked. A shipment, legitimate on paper, a shell company that moves electronics, has been seized at Incheon Customs. Inside one crate, hidden beneath circuit boards, investigators found something that was never supposed to be there. Cash, a lot of it. Enough to trigger a federal inquiry that could unravel 3 years of careful laundering if it isn't contained in the next 6 hours. Min-jun's men are competent, but they are muscle and loyalty, not strategists. His usual fixer is in Macau. His lawyer is unreachable, and the man standing in his study, sweating through his shirt, has no plan beyond we could bribe someone. It's Amara, delivering coffee because the assigned staff member called in sick, who sees the customs paperwork spread across the table and says, without being asked, that manifest is wrong? Every man in the room turns. Excuse me? Minjun says. The weight declaration doesn't match the HS code you're using, Amara says, setting the tray down, not flinching under 6 pairs of eyes. I used to do inventory audits for a shipping firm in Lagos before I came here. If customs is holding it on suspicion, they're not looking for the cash. Not yet. They're looking for a paperwork discrepancy, because that's an easy hold to justify without a warrant. Fix the manifest before they look deeper, and you have a much smaller problem. Silence. How? Minjun says slowly. Would you fix it? She tells him, precisely, efficiently. In 4 sentences, she outlines a correction that his fixer, when finally reached by phone an hour later, confirms is exactly right. The crisis dissolves by 9 a.m. Minjun doesn't say thank you. Men like him don't say thank you to staff. But he watches her leave the room, spine straight, tray balanced, not one flicker of pride or fear on her face, and for the first time in longer than he can remember, he is curious about a person who works in his house. Not what she looks like, who she is. The clashes start small. Minjun begins finding reasons to be in rooms Amara is cleaning. He asks questions disguised as observations. You worked in logistics before this. You send money home every month, don't you? You don't smile at me the way the others do. Should I? She asks once, not looking up from the shelf she's dusting. Most people do. Most people are afraid of you. And you're not? She finally looks at him. I've met scarier men than you doing much less interesting work than running a household, sir. The sir lands like a small blade. He almost smiles. Almost. She doesn't know yet what he actually is. She knows he's cold, wealthy, feared by staff, and referred to in hushed tones as the young chairman, but the word Mafia has never been spoken in her presence. Not until the night she comes home late and finds 2 of his security men in unmarked cars parked outside her building. For her protection, they say, after a rival organization's scouts were spotted near the mansion's staff entrance. That's the night she understands what kind of house she works in. She should quit. She thinks about it for exactly 1 night. Then she remembers the money she sends home, the mother she is putting through a second cataract surgery, and she goes back to work the next morning like nothing happened. Except now, when Minjun walks past her, she watches him a little differently too. Neither of them says anything about it. That's the deal they've made without discussing it. The truth stays underneath the surface, where truths like theirs are supposed to live. Then Naya gets sick, a fever that won't break. Amara, desperate, does something she's never done? She asks Minjun directly for help, standing in his study at midnight with red eyes and a trembling child in her arms. There's a girl, she says, 6 years old. I found her abandoned. I should have told someone weeks ago, and I didn't, and I need a doctor who won't call the police, and I am asking you because you're the only person I know who can make that happen without questions. Minjun looks at the child. Something in his chest, something old, something he thought had been surgically removed years ago, tightens. Bring her inside, he says. His personal physician comes within the hour. The fever breaks by dawn, and when Minjun finally sees the child clearly, sleeping in a guest room with Amara curled protectively in the chair beside her, he notices, for the first time, the small silver shape at the girl's throat. He doesn't say anything that night, but he doesn't sleep either. The next morning, he tests something small, the way careful men always do before they commit to a bigger move. He sends Amara to the market with a driver and a generous cash allowance, ostensibly to buy the child clothes and medicine. What he's actually watching is how she handles unsupervised money and unsupervised freedom, whether she pockets a single one that isn't hers, and whether she disappears for even 10 minutes longer than the errand requires. She comes back with exact receipts, every item itemized, change counted and returned to the last coin. You didn't have to account for all of it, he tells her, when she hands him the ledger she made without being asked. Yes, I did, she says, because the last time someone in this house decided I was a thief, I lost my job in under a minute. I'm not giving anyone that excuse twice. The words hit harder than she probably intends. He says nothing, but that evening he quietly instructs his security team to pull the full internal footage from the night the bracelet disappeared. Not because he suspects Amara, not anymore, but because some part of him already knows what he'll find, and he needs to see it with his own eyes before he acts on it. Because he knows that pendant. He grew up watching his mother wear it every single day of his childhood, right up until the day she died and it disappeared from the family vault along with, everyone assumed, whatever grief-stricken relative had taken it as a keepsake before the estate was sealed. Nobody outside 4 people has ever known that pendant existed. So how is a nameless, abandoned 6-year-old wearing it around her neck? He doesn't confront Amara immediately. That's not how he operates. He watches. He waits. He has Ji-ho, his most trusted lieutenant, quietly dig into the girl's records, birth certificate, hospital history, anything. Ji-ho comes back 3 days later with nothing, which is its own kind of something. Her birth certificate is fabricated, Ji-ho reports. Not forged badly, forged well, government level well. Her fingerprints don't exist in any national database, which for a 6-year-old citizen is basically impossible unless someone erased them. Someone with serious access buried this child on purpose. Buried her from what? I don't know yet, but whoever did it wanted her invisible, and whoever's protecting her, the maid, has no idea she's sitting on something this big. That's when the second thread pulls tight, because that same week, Seo Yeon, Min Jun's fiancée, daughter of Chairman Han, a woman who has spent 11 months treating the household staff like furniture, corners Amara in the laundry room. I know you're spending more time in the East Wing, Seo Yeon says, arms folded, voice sugar-coated and razor-edged. I know there's a child. I think very carefully about what happens to your job. And your immigration status, if that continues. Amara doesn't flinch. Is that a threat? It's a standard, Seo Yeon says. This house has an image. A little stray from wherever she's from doesn't fit it. Her name, Amara says quietly, is Naya, and you don't get to decide who fits in a house you don't clean. Seo Yeon's smile doesn't move, but her eyes do. 3 days later, an emerald and diamond bracelet vanishes from Seo Yeon's dressing room. It's found 40 minutes later inside a shoebox at the bottom of Amara's closet. The accusation happens in the foyer at the worst possible hour, in front of the worst possible people, which is precisely the point. She's been stealing from this house for months, Seo Yeon announces to the assembled staff, holding the recovered bracelet aloft like evidence in a trial she has already decided the verdict of. I want her gone, tonight. I didn't take it, Amara says, flat, steady, not a single tear. Of course you'd say that. I would say it, Amara replies, because it's true. I don't need you to believe me. I need you to actually look at the footage from the hallway camera outside my room before you decide my life is over. Nobody looks at the footage. The head housekeeper, terrified of Seo Yeon, sides with her instantly. Security is told to escort Amara out, and upstairs, watching from the balcony above, is Min Jun, silent, arms crossed, and for reasons he hasn't fully processed, not intervening. It's the mistake he'll spend the next several days regretting, because he lets it happen. He tells himself it's not his place to override Seo Yeon in front of the staff, tells himself Amara can find another job, tells himself the pendant question can wait until he's investigated properly and quietly. And none of those reasons are good enough, and some part of him knows it, even as he does nothing. Amara is walked to the gates with her suitcase. Nia is waiting outside them. She always waits there in the evenings, out of sight of the main house, because Amara made her promise to hide during the day. The little girl runs to her the second the gate opens, wraps both arms around her waist, and that's when Min Jun, finally, comes downstairs to see what's happening, and the light catches the small silver shape around the child's neck, and everything he thought he understood about this house, this family, this staff member, rearranges itself in the space of 4 seconds. This is the moment from the beginning, the moment the story opened on. Min Jun lifting the pendant, asking the question that has no easy answer. Where did she get this? He orders them both back inside. Seo Yan protests. He ignores her. The first time in their entire engagement he has ever done so publicly. And something about the way the room reorders itself around that single act tells everyone present, staff and fiancé alike, exactly whose authority actually governs this house. The investigation that follows takes 11 days and unravels 17 years of buried history. Ji-ho pulls the hallway camera footage first, out of habit more than expectation, and finds Seo-yeon's personal assistant entering Amara's room the morning the bracelet disappeared, and leaving 11 minutes later carrying something small enough to fit in a coat pocket. The frame job was never subtle. It was just never supposed to be checked. Why would Seo-yeon go to this much trouble over a maid? Ji-ho asks. She wasn't trying to get rid of a maid, Min-jun says slowly, staring at the frozen frame. She was trying to get rid of the girl standing next to her. The deeper he digs, the darker it gets. An old photograph, unearthed from his mother's sealed personal archive, shows her standing beside a young African woman, smiling, sunlit, an infant on the younger woman's lap. Around the infant's neck, the same silver dragon. That's not Amara, Ji-ho confirms, after running facial comparison against old immigration records. That's her mother. This photo is 26 years old. Min-jun's mother had secretly funded an orphanage and humanitarian shelter in Busan for over a decade before her death. A fact scrubbed from every official biography, known to almost no one. The shelter helped immigrant women and abandoned children. Amara's mother had been one of the women it protected. The connection between his family and Amara's isn't coincidence. It's history. Buried, deliberate, decades-old history. And the deeper thread, the one that makes Min-jun's hands go cold when Ji-ho finally lays it out, is this. His mother didn't die falling down a staircase 17 years ago. She died because she had discovered that members of the Kang organization were running a trafficking network hidden behind the charity fronts she herself had helped legitimize. She'd started gathering evidence to expose it. Before she could, she was killed. But she'd hidden something first, a failsafe. A dead man's switch built into a piece of jewelry no one would ever think to search. A pendant containing a microscopic encrypted memory chip designed to activate only when brought within range of a specific device Min-jun inherited without ever knowing what it was for. The pendant isn't sentimental. It's a key, and it's been hanging around the neck of an abandoned 6-year-old girl this entire time. Amara doesn't trust him. Not yet. Maybe not ever, she tells herself, sitting in the guest suite he's insisted she and Nia occupy for their safety, arms folded, jaw tight. You let them throw me out, she says when he finally comes to explain what Ji-ho found. You stood on that balcony and watched, and you didn't say a word until it was convenient for you. You're right. She blinks. She hadn't expected that. I'm not going to explain it away, Min-jun says. There's no version of what I did that sounds better with more words attached to it. I let it happen because intervening felt complicated, and complicated has always been someone else's problem in this house. That was a mistake. You paid for it. Nia paid for it. I'm not asking you to forgive that. I'm telling you it won't happen again. Power means nothing, Amara says, quiet and even. If you can't protect the person standing directly in front of you. You had all of it. The house, the money, the men outside the gate, and you used none of it for me until it served your own curiosity. The words land harder than anything Seo-yeon has ever said to him, because Seo-yeon's cruelty he's learned to expect. Amara's honesty, he has not. He doesn't argue with her. That, more than any apology, is what starts to change something between them. Over the following days, something shifts. Not romance, not yet, just the slow architecture of respect being rebuilt one honest exchange at a time. He starts asking her opinion, not testing her competence, but actually valuing it. She starts letting him into rooms where Nia is present, watching, deciding in small increments whether he can be trusted with something this fragile. Nia is the one who breaks the stalemate first. One evening, finding Min-jun alone in his study, she climbs into the chair across from his desk without being invited. A small act of trust that costs her more than anyone in the room understands, and asks the question that's been sitting in her 6-year-old chest for weeks. Why is everyone scared of you? Min-jun considers lying, decides against it. Because I've spent a lot of years making sure they should be. Are you scary? I used to think being scary was the same thing as being safe. He looks at her for a long moment. I'm starting to think I was wrong about that. Nia studies him with the unnerving directness only children have. Are you going to leave us too? He doesn't have an answer ready. That's the part that surprises him, not the question, but the silence that follows it. The weight of realizing he's already made a promise he's never said out loud, not even to himself. No, he says finally, I'm not. He means it. He has no idea yet how much that promise is about to cost him. The betrayal comes from exactly where he never thought to look. Seo Yeon, cornered and desperate after Ji-ho's investigation starts closing in on the frame job, makes a call to her father, Chairman Han, one of Seoul's most influential businessmen whose legitimate real estate empire has quietly laundered funds for the Kang organization's trafficking network for over a decade. But when Min Jun finally traces the order that erased Nia's records, the order that authorized her father's abandonment, the order behind his own mother's murder, the trail doesn't stop at Chairman Han, it leads inside his own house. To his uncle, Kang Dae-sung raised Min Jun after his parents died, taught him everything, how to run the organization, how to read a room, how to survive in a world that eats weakness for breakfast. Min Jun has trusted this man with his life more times than he can count. The security breach that lets an assassination team locate their supposedly secure safe house 2 nights later could only have been authorized by someone with access to Min Jun's private security codes. There are exactly 3 people with that access: Min Jun, Ji-ho, and Dae-sung. The attack comes at 2 a.m. Gunfire tears through the safe house's ground floor. Amara, moving faster than anyone gives her credit for, grabs Nia and gets her into the reinforced panic room seconds before the hallway she'd been standing in is riddled with bullets. Min Jun, fighting his way through his own compromised security detail, realizes with sick certainty exactly whose hand is behind this. They escape. Barely. 3 of Min Jun's men don't. Standing in the wreckage afterward, ash and smoke still hanging in the air, Amara turns to him with something in her eyes that isn't fear anymore. It's fury. You promised her, she says. You promised her you wouldn't leave, and she almost died tonight because someone inside your own family wanted her gone. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, the people I trust to protect this child keep being the ones who put her in danger. He has no argument. Not this time. This is the darkest moment of the story. The point where everything he's built with her feels like it's collapsing under the weight of his own family's rot, and he has to decide, standing in the ruins of a safe house that was supposed to be untouchable, whether he's willing to burn down everything he inherited to keep the promise he made to a 6-year-old girl. He decides, and it costs him everything he thought he had left. Dae-sung doesn't hide anymore once he knows he's been found out. There's a particular kind of confidence that comes from 30 years of never being questioned, and he wears it even now, sitting behind the desk of Kang Organization's true seat of power, not the mansion, but a nondescript office tower in Gangnam that has quietly run half the underworld's laundering operations for 2 decades. He has Nia. His men took her from a second safe house 2 days after the first attack, a location known only to Ji-ho and Min Jun, which tells Min Jun, with a fresh stab of betrayal, that his lieutenant's loyalty is no longer something he can assume without proof. Dae-sung's demand is simple: surrender full control of the organization, sign it over, walk away, and the girl lives. You raised me, Min Jun says over the phone, voice like stone. You taught me every rule I know, and you're using a 6-year-old as leverage. I taught you that sentiment is expensive, Dae-sung says. I'm simply reminding you of the tuition. Min Jun doesn't sign anything. Instead, he does the one thing his uncle never trained him for, because his uncle never imagined he'd need it. He tells the truth to people who can't be silenced. Working through the night with Ji-ho, whose loyalty, it turns out, was never the problem. The breach came from a junior officer Dae-sung had personally recruited years ago, a fact Ji-ho uncovers and brings to Min Jun with visible relief at his own vindication. Min Jun compiles everything: his mother's original evidence, partially reconstructed from her old files, the falsified records, the trafficking network's financial trail, connecting Dae-sung directly to Chairman Han's real estate fronts. SEO Yeon's role in the frame job. He doesn't send it to the police first. He sends it to 3 investigative journalists, 2 international human rights organizations, and a federal prosecutor known for being unbribable, with instructions that everything releases automatically if he doesn't personally cancel the transmission within 48 hours. Then he walks, alone, into his uncle's headquarters. Amara tries to stop him at the door. "You don't have to do this alone." "Yes," he says, "I do. If this goes wrong, I need you far away from it, with Naya, where you can both still run." He pauses. "I'm not doing this because I have to prove something. I'm doing it because I finally understand what you told me. Power that doesn't protect the person in front of you isn't power, it's just noise." She doesn't stop him again. The confrontation happens in Dae Sung's private office, 30 floors above the city, with Naya seated in a chair in the corner, silent, terrified, watching 2 men she's never fully understood decide her fate with words instead of weapons. "You're not here to negotiate," Dae Sung observes, reading Min Jun's face correctly for the first time in this entire ordeal. "No," Min Jun says, "I'm here to tell you it's already too late for that." He lays it out, the evidence already sitting with journalists, the 48-hour clock already running, the financial trail already traced to Chairman Han. Every safety net Dae Sung spent decades building, already unraveling in real time. "You killed my mother," Min Jun says, "because she found out what you'd built underneath her charity. You erased my brother's daughter's entire existence to hide her. You had my parents' deaths ruled an accident, and you raised me in the house you built on top of their blood, and you called it family." Dae Sung's composure finally cracks. "Everything I did to protect this organization. To protect you." "No." Min Jun's voice doesn't rise. It doesn't need to. "You did it to protect yourself, and you used the word family to make it sound like something else?" "Family," Min Jun repeats, letting the word sit in the air like something rotten. "You stood over my parents' graves and called yourself family. You sat across from me at every birthday, every holiday, every business meeting for 17 years, and you let me believe I owed you my loyalty for raising me, when you were the reason I had nothing else left to be loyal to? I gave you an empire," Dae Sung says, and for the first time his voice loses its practiced calm. "I gave you power most men would kill for. You gave me a cage and told me it was a birthright." Min Jun takes a step closer to the desk. "I spent my whole life thinking strength meant never needing anyone. You taught me that. And it took a maid who wasn't afraid of me, and a little girl who asked why everyone was scared of me, to show me that the version of strength you sold me was just isolation with better tailoring." Dae Sung's jaw tightens. He glances briefly at the door, calculating still, even now, whether there's an exit that doesn't end in prison. There isn't, and some part of him seems to understand that, because when he speaks again, his voice has gone quiet in a way that's somehow more dangerous than his anger. That's when Dae Sung, cornered, plays the card he's been holding since the beginning, the one piece of information he was certain would break Min Jun completely. "She's not just some evidence you can hide behind," he says, nodding toward Nia. "She's my granddaughter. Her father, your brother, didn't die in an accident 12 years ago. He found out about the network. He tried to run with her mother. I had them eliminated." A pause, deliberate, cruel. "The child survived? Your mother spent her final months making sure she stayed hidden and protected, because she knew what I'd do to a loose thread." The room goes silent. Min Jun looks at Nia. Really looks at her. The shape of her jaw, the set of her eyes, features he never let himself notice before because he had no reason to look for them. His brother's daughter, his niece, not a stranger his mother happened to protect. Family, in the truest sense of the word, his uncle has spent this entire conversation counterfeiting. "The pendant was never meant to identify her," Min Jun says slowly, understanding landing all at once. "It was meant to lead me to the truth. My mother knew someone would eventually find her. She just made sure that whoever did would also find everything you did to bury her." Dae Sung's men move toward the door, too late. Prosecutors, alerted an hour earlier by Ji Ho on Min Jun's instruction, are already in the lobby. The 48-hour clock never needed to finish counting down. Min Jun triggered the release the moment he confirmed his uncle had taken the girl, understanding correctly that Dae Sung would never let any of them walk out otherwise. Dae Sung is arrested in his own office, in front of the nephew he raised to be his weapon and instead became his undoing. Justice, when it finally arrives, doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with paperwork, testimony, months of court dates, and the slow, grinding machinery of accountability finally working the way it's supposed to. Dae Sung is charged with multiple counts of murder, conspiracy, and human trafficking, the evidence too thorough and too public for any of his old connections to bury. Chairman Han's financial empire collapses under federal investigation within the year. SEO Yan, facing charges for the frame job and for her role funneling information to her father, is arrested at the airport attempting to leave the country. The same gates, ironically, that Amara once walked through with a suitcase and nowhere to go. Min Jun doesn't rebuild the organization. He dismantles it, piece by piece, account by account, working with the same prosecutors who nearly destroyed him to ensure what's left of the Kang Empire's criminal architecture is torn out at the root. The armed guards disappear from the mansion gates. The secret rooms are emptied. What used to be Seoul's most feared house becomes slowly just a house. Amara doesn't go back to being a maid. With funding, Min Jun insists on providing, not as charity, he tells her, but as long overdue restitution for what his family took from hers. She starts a foundation in her mother's name, continuing the work his mother once funded in secret: shelter and legal support for immigrant women and abandoned children with nowhere else to turn. Nia lives with them, not as a ward, not as a case file with erased fingerprints, but as a daughter in every way that matters, her name properly restored to official record for the first time in her life. And Min Jun, the man an entire city once crossed the street to avoid, spends his evenings at a kitchen table helping a 7-year-old with math homework, losing arguments to Amara about his cooking, and slowly discovering that the family he built out of choice means infinitely more than the one he inherited by blood. One evening, months later, Nia finds the old pendant sitting on his desk, its work finally done. "Do you still want it?" she asks. Min Jun looks at Amara, standing in the doorway, arms crossed, watching them both with an expression that has softened by degrees over the better part of a year. He smiles. "No, it already brought me what I needed." "What do you mean?" Amara asks. "It brought me the truth." He looks at Nia. "And it brought me my family." The final scene finds them at the mansion gates, the same gates where Amara once stood with a suitcase in her hand, where a terrified child once waited in the dark for someone to come back for her. There are no guards now, no fear, just Nia, laughing, running through the open gates toward the two people who chose to become her family when nothing obligated them to. But peace in a story like this is never quite finished announcing itself. A week later, an envelope arrives at the house with no return address. Inside is a photograph of Min Jun's mother, taken weeks before her death. Tired eyes, a tight, knowing smile, standing outside a building none of them recognize. On the back, 6 handwritten words: "There is another child. Find him." Min Jun stares at it for a long time. Amara comes to stand beside him, reading the words over his shoulder, understanding immediately what they mean. Nia was never the only secret his mother spent her final months protecting. Somewhere in Seoul, another child connected to the Kang family's buried past is still out there, still hidden, still waiting, still unaware that someone finally has a reason to come looking. Min Jun folds the photograph carefully and looks at Amara. "One more," he says. She doesn't hesitate. "Then we find him." Behind them, through the open gates, Nia's laughter echoes across the courtyard. Proof that some doors, once opened, never close again. If this story kept you hooked till the end, comment below. What would you have done in Min Jun's place? Walked away from everything or risked it all to protect a child who wasn't even yours by blood? Like this video and subscribe because the next story is even more intense.